All right guys, so I just got done with my 6th pro basketball season overseas, and over the years I've learned from some of the best trainers, coaches, and specialists, as well as from my own experience and research, how to maximize my offseason to play at my absolute peak during my next season. And so I'll walk you through my bell curve method and how I structure each phase of my offseason. So now the offseason is critical to the success of the regular season because during the actual season, the demand on the body is so intense that we don't have a lot of time for real development. You need to be constantly adjusting to team strategy, managing fatigue, and focusing on competing at the highest level. The truth is, your offseason has a huge impact on your success of the following season. So with that being said, here is how I structure my offseason. Again, this is my offseason philosophy from years of experience. It may be a little bit different than yours, but I think you can take a lot from it. I'm gonna break it down into 4 phases and walk you through the following of each phase. Number 1, what I do in each phase for basketball, cardio, and weights. Number 2, what a full week of training looks like in each phase. And number 3, and probably most important, the intention behind each phase. Stick around to the end because you may be making a crucial mistake in the end of your off season that might disrupt the start of your next season. All right, let's get into it. So we have 4 phases of our off-season summer training program. If we think of this bell curve line as our load, meaning the amount of work we're doing in each phase of our off-season, we break this down into 4 different phases. The first being a complete reset. This is where we try and shed any fatigue from the last season and get our mind right and itching to play basketball again. Then our second phase is the ramp up. This is when we start to prepare our body for the most important part of our off season, which is phase number 3. And this is when we do our best work. This is the period of the off season where we're really trying to get better and improve. And then we finish the summer phase 4 with our deloading phase. Some call it a cool down. This is so we don't run ourselves to the ground before the next season, and that our body feels good going into the preseason. Each of these phases have different goals and fundamentally different work in terms of basketball, cardio, and weights. Now I want to break down each phase so that you can start to build your own off season with this bell curve method in mind. To begin, we have phase 1. This phase is essentially the week after the season when you want a full mental reset. So again, the goal is to get your mind right. There's a lot of baggage that comes with the basketball season, a lot of fatigue, a lot of burnout, and I think it's most healthy before you get into another taxing off season is to just flush out the last season. So in terms of basketball workouts, I don't want you touching a basketball for at least a week. I don't want you watching basketball. I don't want you thinking about basketball. Try and do other things. So for me, some of the things I do is I'll do yoga, I'll spend time with my family, I'll try and get outside, maybe go on a couple hikes, things like this where basketball is the last thing on my mind. Now in terms of weights, I don't want you picking up a weight. I don't want you guys doing any of that, but you can do some mobility, yoga, some light movement just to make sure your body's feeling a little mobile and active. I don't want you just sitting on the couch. The idea is this active recovery and active reset. So more or less, phase 1 is the simplest. It's just a full-blown reset. And now that leads us to phase 2. Phase 2 is the build-up phase. This is the time of the off-season where you're slowly ramping up your body, allowing it to get used to a higher workload. You just took time completely off in phase 1, and it wouldn't be smart to jump to phase 3 where you're really pounding on your body, you're lifting heavy weights, you're playing 5-on-5. That's a recipe for injury. So this phase 2 is the build-up stage. We want to build our bodies up slowly. So in terms of basketball, this is when we want to really focus on skill work and shooting. This can be medium to low intensity skill work and shooting as to not over train too early. But again, this should be 5 to 6 days a week It doesn't have to be long workouts. It could be 60 to 90 minutes, but you want to get in the gym and get your feel back for the basketball. Now, in terms of weights, I like to start this phase with a lot of body weight stuff just so that I can get used to moving my body again and what it feels like to be in control of my body and not just start throwing a bunch of weight around. In this weight session, I'll normally do higher repetitions rather than heavy weight with an emphasis on listening to my body. How am I feeling? What feels a little fatigued from the last season? How can I rehab and patch up any deficiencies in my body? And then in terms of cardio, because we're just introducing pounding and weight bearing load to our body after our reset, you want to be strategic. I like to do a lot of bike, swimming, and also low impact stuff like jump rope. So now with all that being said, this is how it would translate into a week of training.
Listen, I saved you guys the time of writing this down by putting together a super easy to read PDF that has outlines of each week of the off season as well as the full bell curve method breakdown. You can get access to this as well as all my other free development resources by clicking the link in the description. All right, now let's get back to the video.
Now that brings us to phase 3. Now phase 3 is the most intense period of your off-season training. It also most of the time will be the longest period. This is where real development happens. You don't have any time during your season to completely focus on you, but your off-season, you have this period. We already took our rest, we reset, then we built up our body to be prepared for phase 3. So again, the goal of phase 3 is real development. This is when we want to add stuff to our game. This is when we want to compete as much as we can. And this is when we want to get stronger, faster, quicker, whatever you want to add to your game and body, this is the time to do it. So in terms of basketball workouts, this is when you should be playing as much live basketball as you can, 5-on-5, 3-on-3, intense one-on-ones. You can still do your skill workouts, but they don't take priority. Of course, if you can't find any live playing, then just make your skill workouts really intense, but this is when you want to be playing and competing. Now, in terms of weights, since we just prepared our body doing body weight stuff and high repetitions, now it's time to make the real gains. This is when we want to lift heavy, lift explosive. And for me, this is when I introduce lateral and vertical themed days. This is a bit more advanced of a topic and something maybe I'll cover in a later video, but essentially this is when you want to make your gains. This is when the weight room is very important. So with those two things being said, you have to consider that that's a huge workload on your body. So cardio in this phase takes a complete backseat. Your cardio should be switched to almost like recovery. This is things like the sauna. This is things like a rehab pool workout. This is yoga. This is mobility sessions. We can't increase our volume on the court, increase our weights in the weight room, and then also try and add cardio. We're getting enough of that with our live playing. So with all that being said, this is what a week of training in phase 3 would look like.
Again, a reminder to get all your off-season week breakdowns in an easy-to-read PDF by clicking the link in the description.
And that brings us to phase 4, the final phase of our summer off-season program. In phase 4 is where a lot of athletes make a huge mistake. A lot of athletes try and go as hard as they can and crank their way into the next season. Well, phase 4 is the cool down or the deloading phase. With the looming preseason and the demands on our body, mind, and everything, we need to be smart and not enter that preseason already beat down and already fatigued. We don't want to enter preseason at 100%. The idea is to enter at a reasonable level of conditioning, 70, 75%, but the teams that you're going to are not expecting you to be in mid-season shape right when you arrive there. So that's kind of the intention behind phase 4. We just cranked out a bunch of work in phase 3. We got better, we made big improvements, we got stronger. Now it's time to give our body a little bit of a cool down essentially. So in phase 4, your basketball workouts should be less competitive. I'd say less contact, less live play, but your skill work should still be there. But again, you don't want to risk maybe a small tweak or something before going into your season. Now, in terms of the weight room, this is when you want to do a lot of rehab and recovery lifts to give back to your body after that intense month or so of phase 3. Things like isometrics, things like weighted mobility. This is really important in this phase. Now, I still want you to be lifting weights and doing some sort of dynamic movements in the weight room, but not things that are gonna make you excessively sore or make your joints feel fatigued. In terms of cardio, you still wanna enter the preseason in relatively good shape, so we don't wanna just shut it down completely. If we make sure our skill workouts are intense enough, then maybe we don't need extra cardio, but if our skill workouts aren't touching that red line a little bit during each workout, then maybe we wanna do some cardio. Things I like to do in this phase are the assault bike, extended time periods of jump rope, and maybe some light jogs. So in phase 4, a week of training would look something like this.
All right, for the last time, if you want this full off-season breakdown with each detailed week listed out in an easy to read PDF, click the link in the description and it's yours completely free.
You have to consider that your team that you're going to in the preseason doesn't want you to come there fatigued. So if you're ramping up from phase 3 all the way into your season, there's a chance that you're gonna come already a little burnt out, maybe have some small injuries, and also your risk of injury is going to be much higher than if you didn't take a cool down. That's what phase 4 is for. All right, that is my off-season training philosophy. We call it the bell curve method. Again, 4 phases: a reset, a ramp up, your best work, and a deload phase. I'm gonna be going through this in my off season. If you wanna follow along, you guys can like and subscribe to my channel. I'll be documenting all my workouts. I'll be sharing all the different stuff I'm doing this off season. So if you wanna train alongside me, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I also have a link in the description with most of my off season workouts, as well as a summary of this off season training method, a little bell curve PDF. You just basically sign up, put your email in, and you'll get access to a Google Drive that has all these different documents. I also built an off-season workout log for you guys. You can get it on my website, www.liveatypical.com. It's a place where you can document all your weights and workouts in the weight room. I use it. It's been super helpful having a tangible thing that I can track my progress. I think it'll help you guys. If you're interested, check it out. And I appreciate you guys watching to the end of this video. And if you're still here, remember to get uncomfortable and live atypical. Cheers.